time to start. So I'd like to welcome everybody to the second Open Campus webinar in the series between dotSpace and Eurisy. And in this hour, we'll talk about our theme, marine space for the marine environment. This webinar is part of a monthly webinar where we talk about space opportunities for climate challenges, inspired by the EU Green Deal, but definitely not limited to the EU Green Deal. And the purpose of these webinars is first and foremost to show you some interesting cases about a particular theme related to space opportunities for climate challenges, but also to show you opportunities to get involved in space data for climate challenges. I'm your host, Remco Timmermans. I represent Ground Station dotSpace, and I am presenting this together with Cornel Bogaert and Alessandra Vanille of Eurisy. So let me see if I can move to my next slide here. There we go. Yes, before we start, we kindly ask you to turn off your camera and mute your microphone in case you haven't done that already. We can only see the panelists. People who are registered as attendees will not need to bother. They're automatically muted and the video is off. Please use the chat function. In the bottom of your screen, you have a chat function. And we encourage you to use it to introduce yourself for general remarks and for questions. The third option, use the Q&A tab in the top right corner. Sorry, that's in the bottom. You can use that, but you can also use the chat for your questions. It's important to enjoy this webinar the next hour, and I'll repeat this a few times over. At the end of the webinar, we're not done because the unique one of the unique features of this webinar is that we can continue the discussion 24/7 at our online platform that I'll talk about a little bit more towards the end of this webinar. So first of all, as I said before, use the chat function to introduce yourself, to ask questions and to chat with your fellow attendees. I already said this is part of a monthly series, so look out for the next edition next month. But first of all, let's focus on today's theme, which is space for the marine environment. We'll be going through several steps in this webinar where we will welcome you, as we're doing right now, introduce the topic, show you some of the key news items that happened recently related to space for the marine environment. We'll point out a few future events that you may be interested in to find out more about this theme. And then we have three interesting speakers who will all talk about space for the marine environment from their specific point of view, either academically, from a government point of view, or an industry point of view, just to get familiar with the topic. After that, we have, in this case, we have one-minute pitch, again, where an organization involved in the topic will introduce themselves. And after that, as I said, we'll move over to the Open Campus Forum, which I will explain more about after the speakers. So first of all, I would like to introduce you to Cornel Bogaert of Eurisy. Cornel?
Yes, thank you very much, Remco. So I will first try to share my screen. So you should be able to see my presentation right now. Everything is correct?
Yes, yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. So yes, indeed, very pleased to present our second wave of space opportunities for climate challenges today. So our first session covered plant health and biodiversity 1 month ago, and yeah, this session will be quite similar. So we will have three speakers, one of governmental, one from research, and one from the business side. And of course, the topic will be different today. So we will cover space for marine environment. And let me just start off with a few interesting facts about the oceans on our planet, because, well, 71% of our planet's surface is covered by the oceans, which holds a total of 97% of all water on our planet, and even 99% of the living space on Earth. And actually, we have today we have better maps of the planet Mars than we do have of the bottom of the ocean, because more than 80% is still undiscovered, and we're quite convinced that European space assets such as the Copernicus Earth Observation Program and the Galileo satellite navigation system can really help us to better manage our coastal areas. And as you can see, just a few weeks ago, the European Environment Agency pointed out that a lot of that even 93% of Europe's marine area is under multiple pressure from human activities. So it's really important to talk about it, and I think there's a lot of opportunity for space to really help us better manage these congested marine areas. And this is something we also do at Eurisy. We try to diffuse space-derived innovation. We do that through different thematic areas. For example, this year there was a lot, well, actually last year, there was a lot about COVID-19. That's of course still ongoing. So about disease modeling, we had events about tracing apps using satellite navigation. We work around different thematic areas such as smart cities, focusing on air pollution, smart mobility, even in cultural heritage, so protecting really archaeological sites, even in sports. So I really encourage everyone to visit our website, eurisy.eu. And of course, also our social media channels. We are on Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn, Instagram, and we really try to provide you with fresh and daily content. And so on our website, let me just introduce our database of success stories. So over the years, we really built an extensive repository of success stories where we talk about user experiences and showcase their cases. So we try to really deep dive into professional communities beyond the traditional boundaries of the space sector, focusing on numerous sectors. But of course, today we focus on the maritime area. And the objective of this database is to favor the uptake of satellite-based solutions in the workflow of end users, and we try to also support SMEs offering satellite-based services. So for us, it's not only about the technology, but also especially about the users making use of satellite-based data. And of course, I also invite you to send your success story. If you have an experience or if you have an interesting case, you can just visit our website, visit our success stories, and there you can have a contact form where you can tip us about any interesting case. And who knows, we might showcase it on our website and on our social media accounts. But as I said, so today we cover maritime, the topic of maritime. And for this, I will pass on the word to my colleague, Alessandra. She will just illustrate a bit better how we, well, just a couple of success stories that she worked on that are featured on our website. So she will now illustrate that a bit further. So Alessandra, please, you have the floor.
Thank you, Cornel, and good afternoon, everyone. So as Cornel said, yes, we have, yes, thanks, Cornel. We are working on the topic of maritime. In particular, we established this project quite recently, but this is not a new topic for Eurisy. We are already working on maritime since 2014. We also had the opportunity of participating to the East Atlantic from Space workshop in 2019. The objective is to pass on the message that satellite applications bring an added value to end users' communities. This is true also in the case of space for maritime, so in the domain of maritime, and in particular for those communities of end users, they need to respond to specific challenges, maybe even in a timely manner. Might be for environmental issues, might be for pollution, might even be to optimize specific sectors, like, for instance, shipping. Next slide, please. I want to explain you better this through a couple of success stories that, as Cornel mentioned, they're also available on our website, in our database of success stories. Next slide, please. I will try to be very fast. So the first example that I would like to bring you is related to aquaculture, and in particular, this is a good practice that involves the Regional Fishery Committee of Lower Normandy. As you might know, Lower Normandy is one of the third largest shellfish producers in France, and in particular, mussels, for instance, represent about 30% of their production. But aqua farmers sometimes are facing some issues for what concerns shellfish yields. Because they have to face a variation of wind, water, temperature, sea currents, and this makes really complicated for them to make yield predictions or even to manage the stock of mussels. In addition to this, sometimes traditional methods, they tend to be costly or not very time efficient, and sometimes they also provide not very complete information to the aqua farmers. So for this reason, the regional committee partnered with IFREMER, which is the French Institute for Maritime Exploitation and of the sea, and they decided to release 6 geolocated drifting buoys to simulate larva drift in the area of Baie de Seine. To estimate the influence of water circulation on mussel larva dispersal, adding in particular this information, the location information, so the positioning of this larva drift, the drifting buoys, with the variation of those parameters that I just mentioned, so wind, water, temperature, and sea currents. The objective in particular was to understand how mussels respond to specific environmental factors, so how they do behave, and try to develop an accurate management procedure and how to protect the most important larval supply beds to maximize, to even better predict the shellfish yields, in particular the mussels one and other crustaceans ones. Next slide, please. The other stories instead that I would like to bring to your attention is on water monitoring, water surveillance, and in particular, it's the examples from the German Central Command for Maritime Emergencies. They always have to deal with marine accidents, and they have to do that in a very time-efficient way, in particular in the area of the North and Baltic Seas. When it comes to incidents or marine incidents, it is important, especially when it's for oil spills, and the story is mainly about oil spills. The response and the reaction needs to be very fast and very specific and very much focused on the area where the oil spills happened, because oil spills are a threat not just to the environment and the marine ecosystem, but also if they get very close to the coast, also to the coastal economies, or in general to the ecosystem of the coast. So they need to receive, the Central Command needed to receive a very quick information, very precise information. So they decided to rely on CleanSeaNet. CleanSeaNet is an oil spill and vessel detection service provided by EMSA and is the European Maritime Safety Agency, and is based on the ordering of SAR satellite images. And one of the solutions that usually are offered through CleanSeaNet is the identification of and tracing of oil pollution on the marine surface, as well as contributing to identification of the polluters, which is also really important, especially for the Central Command. In particular, the command receives a certain number of images per year, about 600 images per year. They usually are classified according to the dark spots and their resemblance of these dark spots in the area of the North and the Baltic Sea, with their resemblance to the oil spills. Combining this information with the vessel position, the Central Command is able to respond to the emergency and to identify the polluters. And everything happens in about an hour and a half, because after 30 minutes they receive this images. The CCME, so the Central Command, sends an aircraft to confirm the presence of the oil spills, and then they communicate to the HQ, so their headquarters, and then they start like the procedures to clean the area where the oil spills happen. The result, of course, is an improved surveillance capacity with more objective information and timely, efficient solutions. And in addition to this, they also have the opportunity, because CleanSeaNet is a European service, to even share with other countries information or even images to respond collectively when it is needed. Next slide, please. I invite you again, as also Cornel did, to visit our website, to get in touch with us, and to visit our social media accounts. Thank you, and I leave the floor to Remco.
Okay, thank you very much, Alessandra. And I will switch back to my other screen, if that works. Yes, that works. You can see my screen again, correct? So very briefly, I would like to introduce the other party to this webinar, which is GroundStation.space, and we are an open innovation network that connects academia, industry, and government for mutual benefit based on the benefits of space data for society. You can see at GroundStation.space for all news and everything that we have to offer. And then I would like to really quickly introduce you to a few news items that hit the press over the last weeks that are relevant, if I can move on, that are relevant, I think, to the topic that we're discussing today. So first of all, I'm sure several of you attended the EU Space Week in December, where quite a few winners were announced of the Copernicus Masters and the Galileo Masters, and relevant to this theme, quite a few of these initiatives were related to the marine environment, and we are very happy that we have one of them, Reef Support, to talk to us, albeit briefly, later on in this webinar. So by all means, have a look at these winners at your leisure. Secondly, Space to Waves, another speaker in this webinar. I'm not sure if Adriana will highlight this, but I found this interesting and I found this timely. There's a call for tenders for providers to assist with the internationalization of European SMEs through Space to Waves. So the link is here. And again, this will be shared with you after the webinar, so you can have a look at it yourself. Then something that we have long been awaiting is a new Copernicus coastal product developed by the Copernicus Land Services together with the Copernicus Marine Environment, because we always see that coastal zones kind of hung in the balance between the land products and the marine products, really not belonging to both, and now they have both collaborated based on the Planetech Ereticus platform, and we're happy to have Daniela in our meeting representing Planetech, who may refer to this new Copernicus product as well. Then this is really fresh news, because the European Space Conference happened yesterday and today. In fact, it just finished before we started this webinar. And for those of you who were not present, I thought I'd highlight the key words that came from this conference that seem to be the buzzwords of the European space policy, the EU space policy, I should say, at the moment, including Horizon Europe, that we'll talk about today, a new program for space entrepreneurship called Cassini, the digital twin, the expansion of Copernicus and Galileo, a new third pillar of the European space program called GovSatcom, not related to our theme, but important nevertheless, space situational awareness, strategic autonomy in space, the European Launcher Alliance, and the new European Agency for the Space Programs that is the new name for what we used to know as GSA. So all very interesting developments, but of course the strengthening and the expansion of Copernicus is the most relevant to the theme here. Then a few events that may happen in the future, actually one happening tomorrow, linked to what I just talked about, organized by ERSC, is at 4 o'clock, so 24 hours from now, the EO Cafe, the Earth Observation Cafe that they organize regularly, which will be focusing on this new space agency for Europe. And then we have, the week after next, we have the Copernicus Marine Service General Assembly. So for those of you who are interested in the Copernicus Marine product specifically, you can join their General Assembly. So with that, I would like to hand it back over to Corneel to introduce our speakers for today. So Corneel.
Thank you, Remco. So let's get straight to our first speaker. So Adriana Constantinescu, she is a PhD scientific researcher in marine geology at GeoEcomar, which is the Romanian Institute for Marine Geology and Geoecology. And as a marine geologist, she has over 10 years of experience in understanding sediment fluxes in river-sea transition areas and sediment transport from catchment to coast. And she will now present the environmental and climate change in the Danube-Black Sea interaction zone. So Adriana, please, you have the floor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for your invitation today. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. So today I would like to share with you our scientific perspective on how we can use Earth observation to improve our knowledge in environmental and climate changes in river sea transition zones. And do I start my video? No.
Please.
Yeah.
Yes, so we can see you. Yeah, that makes it a little bit easier to follow. Sorry about that. Thank you.
Okay, I didn't know that. Sorry. Okay, so first of all, why is this important for the marine environment? Because obviously all the seas and oceans are connected to the land through rivers. Some are bigger, like the Danube, and some are smaller. And rivers control processes in coastal areas down to the deep ocean because they are the main conveyors of water, sediment, and associated particles like pollutants, for example, and plastics from the continent to the sea. Well, if we want to look at environmental and climate change in this area, the way we usually do it is, if we want to look at changes on a long term, we might use sediment coring and hydrodynamic modeling. If we want to look at a very fine temporal resolution from seasonal changes to maybe decadal changes, we use Earth observation because it provides good time series data, coupled with in situ optical properties and measurements of water constituents, because all Earth observation data needs to be validated with ground observation data. So I will focus on the second group of methods. And I want to show you a few examples. This is part of the work I did during my PhD some time ago. So the coastal environments, the transitional environments are under direct influence from water and sediment fluxes. So if we want to look at how this looks in the marine environment, I took just a few examples that will show you on satellite data what a maximum looks and what a minimum looks. So obviously you can see the distribution of total suspended matter. This is a parameter which is very commonly used in this kind of studies because it is very easily to measure in situ, and it is quite easy to obtain from satellite data. And I've used the Mary's Coast Color archive, which is already processed for total suspended matter and chlorophyll. So as you can see, the more water brings in more particles. Less water will bring less particles. But what we see here as total suspended matter is not just sediment. We can use it as a proxy for sediment in areas such as the Danube Delta, and the Black Sea coastal zone, because we know there is continuous input of sediment. Another parameter that we have to use in conjunction, and this is not TSM, sorry, it's a mistake in my presentation, it's chlorophyll. Chlorophyll is produced by microorganisms that live in the surface water. And when we want to do assessment of environmental changes, we usually use both parameters in conjunction. So if we look in detail and we take one or several locations, we can actually trace events such as, for example, big floods in the variation of TSM and chlorophyll. So they give us a very good tool to see how sediment fluxes are distributed, for example, because we see a variation in sediment fluxes, and most of the big rivers are affected by a decrease in sediment. So I just want to show you here how this looks over 8 years of TSM data in the south of the Danube Delta, so just around here, just around this point. And we can easily trace big events such as floods or very high water levels from the coastal zone to the marine zone, so offshore. And if they're big enough, you can see it very far from the river mouth. We use chlorophyll as an indicator of primary productivity, because it can be an indicator of climate change. It was already estimated and proven that chlorophyll is increasing in most inland waters, but apparently this increase, as you can see also in my example, it started happening in coastal zones as well. So long archives, like the Coast Scholar data, for example, gives us the opportunity to look at these changes in detail. The more recent missions of the European Space Agency, such as Sentinel-3, provide improved resolution, both in frequency and in space as well, to look at these changes. So I just want to show you a quick example. And this is an image acquired in 2016 when we were actually doing field work somewhere around here in this area. And we can easily trace the distribution of the Danube plume and its effects on the coastal zone. This kind of satellite data gives the opportunity to look at these kind of parameters into more detail. So for example, this is a profile of the concentration of total suspended matter in the area where we have sampled. And I can tell you, we got very good results with validating the satellite data. So this shows very good promise for scientists who need very, very good proof, or let's say very reliable data. This gives us promise to improve our tools to do environmental and climate change analysis in transitional areas. So as you can see, the Earth observation data is becoming more and more a big piece of the puzzles, because it gives us a very good spatial coverage, temporal coverage. It allows for the use of time series data for several parameters. And it's currently contributing to models for the surface of the ocean, and the satellite missions we have currently provides us with continuous data. I will just take a moment to present to you some of the projects we are currently working on. The Horizon 2020 Monocle and Cherto projects. They are mostly focused on deltas, estuary, and transitional coastal zones. And they are developing tools together with stakeholders for water quality. So if you're interested in water quality products, you can have a look. We are targeting our products for several applications, for fisheries, for tourism, for safety of the coastal space, and also for well, general knowledge of.
I think we just lost you, Adriana. But let me just get you up on there. Thank you very much for your presentation. I don't know if you can still hear me, but thanks anyway for a very good presentation. And it's very nice to see that Earth observation data is a part of the big data policy that we have now, especially in such an important area such as the Danube Delta. I also just want to remind the audience and of course also the speakers that they can use the chat, preferably even the Q&A tab for any questions they have. So we will have a Q&A session just after the presentations. So if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to use the Q&A option there. So you can find it here on the bottom of your screen. And yeah, if you have any questions, please use that option. So now let's move on to our second speaker. So next in line we have Daniela Yazilo. She is a technical manager at Planetech Hellas, and she will present their work within the framework of Marine EO, which is the first Earth observation pre-commercial procurement, implementing 2 different systems to monitor marine hotspots and aquaculture settlements. So Daniela, please, you can present now.
First. Okay. Can you see my presentation?
Yes, we can see it.
Okay, thanks a lot. I will present this project, Marineo. As Cornelio introduced, this is the first pre-commercial procurement funded by under the H2020 program, and this project was funded to support the European public authorities to procure innovative Earth observation services. Planetech Hellas led a consortium composed by Planetech Hellas, Planetech Italia, the CMCC, Cryotech, KSAT, and StormGeo, and with this consortium, we develop, test, and validate a cloud platform for the provision of 3 Earth observation-based services. The first service is focused to provide, to support the marine environmental status through the provision of water quality parameters in small regions such as hotspot and protected areas. The second service focuses on the monitoring of the fish farm threads. And the third is specific for the detection of vessel and iceberg in the Arctic zone. Which are the main benefits for user in adopting this kind of solution? First, there is a connection between the Copernicus Marine Service and the Marine Strategy Framework Directive. And using this service, the user can assess the good environmental status of marine waters. Second, it reduces the cost for coastal and open water monitoring. It supports the aquaculture through the detection of fish farm threads providing alert in case of bad parameters to the operator, and also through the monitoring of the status of the fish farm for decision support. He also contributed to the improvement of the navigation in the Arctic Sea. And last but not least, he provided a user-friendly access to the user to gather the information through a system that is scalable and truly complementary to in-situ campaign. This is the homepage of the cloud platform that we developed with the partner. And this platform today is fully developed and working, and it has been deployed on the CRIODIAS. During this project, we worked essentially on two areas, the first in Greece and the second in Azores, because they represent two types of water very, very different. Which are the services? This is the first. This is services specific to provide water quality parameters. We included a lot of parameters such as chlorophyll, oxygen, salinity, sea surface temperature, but also wave height and wind speed and direction. And the user can select an area of interest, consult the catalog, and visualize the parameter of interest in a selected period. Through another panel, the user can also consult the trend of each parameter. In this moment, for these two areas, we included 10 years of data. So there is a consistent statistic information. And using these 10 years of data, we also identified, for example, some anomalies and some extreme values for selected parameters. Another panel let the user to select an area of interest and ask which is the environmental status according to the threshold defined by the Water Framework Directive. And the user can also download a very simple report to integrate in other kind of reporting. In the second service that is specific for aquaculture, the user can have access to the same parameters already mentioned before, but it can also have information about the forecast and some alerts when some extreme values are identified. Here, the user can see, for example, where is the position of each cage and which is the status according to a selected parameter. In this case, this is a turbidity map. But very important, it's possible to be alerted when extreme values are present. For example, in this case, there is an anomalous wave height, and the threshold can be also selected by the user. This is the two services in very short time. As I mentioned before, our platform now is working. So next step for this year are for sure the promotion through the participation to events, social media, so follow us to be informed. But also we are going to the market through direct sale through our Reticus, that is the commercial service of Planetech, and also through some supporting programs such as Space to Waves that will support us to go in some country extra Europe. Through some partnership, we have commercial agreement with all the partners of the project, and of course through some local and national funding program. So for any visit our website for any information, please contact me.
Thank you very much, Daniela. A very good presentation, and I think an excellent example of how Earth observation can make European aquaculture more sustainable. So again, if there are any questions, feel free to use the Q&A. If you cannot find it, just use the chat instead, and I will try to look for the relevant questions later on during the Q&A session. So for now, let's continue and let's get to our final speaker. So Jonathan Williams is CEO of Marine Southeast, a leading European marine sector consortium, and he has led the organization's development to become a catalyst for marine business investment in innovation and diversification. Marine Southeast is one of the partners of the Space to Waves project, which was also already mentioned. And this project aimed at supporting European SMEs to use Earth observation technologies in the blue growth sector. So Jonathan, please, you can now present.
Okay, thank you very much. And it's very nice to be with you this afternoon. Yes, my name is Jonathan Williams. I lead Marine Southeast, as you know. Host has asked me to start my video. I don't have a video actually, so hopefully that's a mistake. I will close the box.
That's actually your video, so we can see you, Jonathan. Sorry about that.
Oh, I saw you. Beg your pardon. You want me to put my mugshot?
No, I don't expect a YouTube video from you.
Very good. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to talk to you very briefly about some work we've been doing in a number of projects relating to marine environment, particularly looking at marine protected areas and what's going on there, and in particular, how we need to find solutions to illegal fishing in marine protected areas, or else they're not really protected. So I'm going to talk a little bit about where we are with that challenge and some possible ways forward. So there we go. First of all, it's a massive problem. In some parts of the world, a majority of the total catch is actually unlicensed and disappears off the screen, often lost to the local economy, particularly in places like Africa. So it is a big problem. And there are various solutions in place, partial solutions in place. So you can use satellite imaging, coupled with automatic identification of shipping transmissions, feeding into some clever AI analytics to highlight objects which seem to be vessels which are maybe not transmitting in the way that they should be on their automatic identification systems, so you can suspect that they might be doing something illegal. So you can highlight vessels that seem to be behaving maybe a little bit strangely. The problem is you can't then identify the vessel from satellite. So we need other tools to make progress. And one of the tools that we can use is tracking the behavior of the vessel itself. So what we see is that if vessels are engaging in fishing activities, you can actually detect and determine that from the nature of their tracks. And you can see some examples here showing the way that different types of fishing activity results in different kinds of tracks. So by tracking the vessel, you can actually determine firstly whether it's fishing, but also what kind of fishing it's undertaking. And if you determine that actually that is a kind of fishing which is not licensed, or maybe the vessel is not indicating its identity, so you suspect that it doesn't have a license, then that's very good evidence then to show that that vessel has been fishing illegally. The whole idea of this is that we need to be able to use Earth observation and other data to provide a decision support system to assets on the ground. So patrol vessels, for example, that may be policing the marine protected area, who can be directed to locations where we believe illegal activity is happening. and also port states, so that when the vessel returns to port, action can be taken against them through the state where that vessel is registered. So quite a lot of work underway. Ocean Mind is a company in the UK that's done a lot of work in this area. In fact, the previous slide, the image there was from Ocean Mind. And the European Marine Safety Agency also doing a lot, particularly in behavioural analysis of vessels. And the final point to make on this slide is that we need to be much better at sharing data across these big international databases. So a number of these exist now, databases of vessels that are suspected of being illegally fishing, and which are often changing their identity. So you have to keep one step ahead of these guys. They're quite likely to, if they think that they're being discovered, they will simply change the identity of the vessel, register it with a different country, and off they go again. So we need to have very smart tools for picking up this kind of behavior. But ultimately, what we're trying to do to deliver that intelligence to assets on the ground is to risk profile. So this is a very nice example where, by using a combination of the tools I've just mentioned on the previous slides, we can start to highlight areas in marine protected areas. This is a picture from the Tristan da Cunha archipelago in the South Atlantic. Group of islands with some very rich fishing territories, and what we're showing here is the ability to risk profile particular parts of these protected areas, so that vessels can be directed to spend time in those areas, looking out for the vessels that may be fishing illegally, and indeed deploying drones to overfly those areas to get visual images of those vessels, making it much easier to take legal action against them. So what we're seeing in conclusion, really, in this point, is that satellite applications are a key part of a much broader portfolio of technologies and systems, which collectively allow us to start to take action against this kind of illegal behaviour. There's a long way further to go, of course, and we're really dependent on small companies to be able to come up with, or particularly small companies, to come up with innovative solutions. So one thing I wanted to mention to you was a project which we're a partner in called the UFO project. And this is a very neat, it's an INNOSUP project, and it's making available funding to SMEs that have got interesting ideas and wish to get some funding to demonstrate them or to develop them. And this is open now. So if you know any small companies that would be interested in this, do please let them know. There's a current call open at the moment. Another call will be due later in the year, and it provides up to 60,000 euros to each SME. So very nice opportunity. And we're trying to encourage as many companies as possible to submit proposals to that. And the second project you've already heard about, a little bit more information here, Space to Waves. And as you can see, we're targeting 4 countries. Marine Southeast, we're leading the work with South Africa, and other partners are leading work with Australia, Canada, and the United Arab Emirates, to try to create opportunities for small companies to work with and do business with organizations in these countries. So a lot going on, both a lot of challenge, but also some support to companies that might be able to help solve those challenges. So that's all I wanted to say. So thank you very much for your time. Happy to answer questions.
Thank you very much, Jonathan. So indeed, let's move on to the questions now. So I saw a few questions coming up. Let me just start maybe with the first question for the first speaker. So Adriana, this one is for you. To your knowledge, has Romania used satellite data for reporting under the Water Framework Directive, as some member states have, for example, Finland, mostly based on Sentinel and Landsat data? If yes, could you provide some details?
Okay, so there are several institutes and institutions in Romania which report on the Water Framework Directive. However, I can tell you that my institute has never used satellite data for this, because we have started to work on this direction a few years ago. So we don't use it for this kind of things just yet. If they did, they probably used it, well, it was probably validated with institute data. This is everything I know.
All right, thank you very much. And then the other question, so I saw two questions coming up. So for Daniela, the first one, what was the pre-commercial procurement part of your presentation? So who was the intended public buyer? Or is a service you described the result of this pre-commercial procurement part?
Okay, this project Marineo was funded by H2020. They launched a bid, if I will remember, 4 years ago, and the consortium formed by 9 partners won this proposal. The consortium was led by Demokritos and supported by the Directorate General for Marine Policy of Portugal as lead procurer, plus other partners such as Guardia Civil for Spain, Hellenic Marine Center for Greece, Regional Fund for Portugal, and Norwegian Coastal Administration. They won this proposal, and under this pre-commercial procurement scheme, they launched another proposal on the market, and that is divided in 3 phases. During the first phase, there were selected, if I will remember, 4 companies. In the second 3, and in the last 2. So it's a step process. Planetech is one of the company that arrived till the third phase, that was the demonstration phase, together with another consortium led by Telespazio France. This is the process. So what I presented is the solution that Planetech implemented under this program. Tomorrow there is a workshop organized by the Marineo buyers, where all the solution implemented, the ones for Planetech and also the other, will be presented to the European Commission.
Okay, perfect. So that might be also something interesting to share on the platform after this webinar, because we also have this forum where we can exchange sources and future outcomes. So maybe that's something we can share later on. And then I have another question for you, Daniela. So what satellite information sources do you use? Are you limited by current resources in terms of revisit and quality?
Okay, essentially we use data acquired by Copernicus Marine Service, but we also use the MODIS, especially for Azores. We use the Sentinel, and we also use some very high resolution data. Okay.
All right, and then maybe just one final question. So for Jonathan, if I may do so myself. So I just have a question. I mean, the past few months and past year, of course, was a bit rough considering the COVID-19 situation, and especially also with Brexit going on. I mean, you're based in the UK. Is that something you're affected by, or the organization of Marine Southeast, the activities also for cooperation with European SMEs and with the whole internationalization initiative of Space to Waves? Is that something that is interfering with it, or?
Well, the answer has to be yes, but we're managing as best we can. I think we have very strong and very long-lasting links with partners all around the world, many in Europe, and we're fully intending to continue those collaborations whatever the politics may put in our way. So we'll be we'll still be here, and we'll still be aiming to collaborate with our partners and addressing the ocean challenges, which are certainly not going away. So there's work to be done, and we'll find a way of being part of that solution.
Okay, perfect. It's great to hear. And then, yeah, just for everyone else, if you have more questions, we can continue the discussions on the platform after webinar. So now let's move on. I think I can give the word back to Remco.
Yes, you can. And as soon as I'm online, I'm going to hand over to Linda, who will introduce us to some of the relevant funding calls in this area that are open at the moment. So, Linda.
Remco, did you get my presentation?
I did, yes. I can share it if you want.
I thought it was sorted, but I think I have to stop and start again. So
yep, no worries, no worries, no worries. I will share this for you. So I think you should see the presentation now. Is that correct?
Yeah. First slide we can just skip because that's just
makes sense.
In terms of calls, we're in a transition period at the moment because we have just finished a 7-year budget period in Europe, which ended 2020, and we are starting a new period from 2021 to 2027. And we're in this kind of limbo period where the last set of calls, the Green Deal calls, which was around about €1 billion, have a closing date of the 26th of January. And we're waiting for the new big programs, all big programs, Life, Horizon Europe, Erasmus, for the work programs to be approved and for calls to come online. Nevertheless, there are some programs that are almost like a program of programs or a program of funding instruments. And actually, Jonathan's presentation where he mentioned this innovation support project where the project consortium is given a pot of money, some of which they then reallocate again to other consortia. That's also a very interesting system, which is slightly harder to track than the ones that typically go through the EU portal. So I think for the next year, those are maybe ones where we will concentrate also some more effort on. So in this case, I found 2 that are still up and running, relevant to this topic. I entered QR codes for the ones who really want to get to work with it urgently because the deadline is the 25th of January. And this is from the European Institute for Innovation and Technology, the EIT, which has a range of clusters, climate, energy, digital, as well as food. And the EIT Food under Sustainable Aquaculture have launched this call that is currently open, looking for projects to demonstrate and commercialize innovative technological and sustainable solutions. Now, I know we don't have a huge amount of time, so I'll go through it quickly. There is the QR code if you have your phone ready and can scan it very quickly. And otherwise, you'll get sent this information. And there's also a link in the sheet. Next one. This is a bit more specific to small companies. This is under the Blue Invest grants. And that's part of another interesting program, which is the European Maritime and Fisheries Fund, which is actually part of the very large structural funds that we typically hear about more. And this is to help SMEs to advance their market readiness of products and services. And this has a little bit more time because the deadline is the 16th of February, 2021. Also another QR code, which is to the EU portal, which has incredibly complicated long URLs. So that's why the QR code is so dense looking. So if you're very quick again with your phone, and otherwise we'll send these presentations very quickly to you so you can follow the link or scan it anyway. And the next 2 slides are really just to give you an overview of what's coming. So this is what I said earlier, these programs that have been approved, the budget has been approved now by all the legislative authorities in the EU, which means that new programs will be coming on stream, but they're in preparation at the moment and calls will be launched I'm expecting early summer, around about the summer period. So the first one you may have heard about is the successor to Horizon 2020, Horizon Europe. Clusters that will for sure be of interest when you look at already at the draft work programs are these two: climate, energy and mobility, and food, bioeconomy, natural resources, agriculture and environment, where for sure the blue economy, bioeconomy, ocean data, ocean monitoring will be included somehow. Next one, please. Other ones that may not be so obvious to some of you, but life is a very interesting one. It's kind of the bridge. So after the research and innovation projects and just before projects are commercially viable, life funds demonstration projects. The funding is lower than Horizon Europe. So it's really aimed at projects that are looking to commercialize and exploit their development. Destination Earth, or Destiny, is the digital program where the EU, together with the Space Agency, is building a digital model of the Earth, and the oceans are part of this. There's actually a Green Deal call closing on the 26th for the digital twin of the oceans. But this again is an ongoing activity that will get follow-up also in the new program. And the last one, I think. Yeah, so this is the one that has the Blue Invest call open at the moment. Again, under preparation for the next 7 years. The European Maritime and Fishery Funds, which of course also has a lot of relevant funding instruments for the marine and maritime environments. And that's it for me. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Linda. I will stop sharing this and take just 1 minute before we finish. Apologies that we run a little bit over time, but you know, these things happen sometimes. Let me share my screen here. Oop, if I can, yes. And quickly move on to this slide here. This one here, because this is the last, well, this second to last item is the 1 minute pitch. So for this, we have Marcel Kempers, who will, one of the winners of the Copernicus Challenge 2020. And I would like to invite Marcel to join us now.
Hi, thank you very much.
And give your 1 minute pitch, and your time starts now, I guess, Marcel.
Sure. Do you mind if I share my screen?
Not at all, not at all, not at all.
Okay, thank you. And do you see it when it's full?
Yep.
Yeah, and can you hear me clearly as well?
Absolutely, go ahead.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us here today. I'm representing Team Reef Support as the CEO, and yeah, very happy to have you here. So a bit of news, a bit of sad news. 90% of our reefs will be gone by 2050. That's what predictions tell us. Although reefs cover 1% of the ocean's floor, they still support 30% of our ocean's biodiversity, which is super important for our food system for the future. So how are coral reefs destroyed? Illegal fishing and dredging, algae blooms, sea surface temperature rise, which is what we are really focused on as well. That's the largest cost of coral bleaching. So our product really is, we look at it as a technology as a service model, because long-term relationships equals long-term impact. We gather GIS data from a few sources, from Sentinel-3, Sentinel-4, and we have innovation alongside of that. So some examples: ecotourism, aquaculture, low disaster impact, and we use the funds from aquaculture and beach to subsidize our coral conservation efforts. So in September, we started a plan with Indonesia, different kinds of species in different sites, and we track how successful they are. In December last year, we started partnership with Kamabi Foundation, where we took data all the way back from sometimes the 60s, and we track them all the way till today. This is the team right here. Johan is here today as well, CTO, Ava Innovation Manager, I'm the CEO. Not enough time to introduce everyone. We got some media attention also from the Copernicus Challenge, so that's been really nice for us. And thank you very much for this very quick 1 minute presentation. And please feel free to email me, check out our website, and join us on our mission.
Okay, thank you very much, Marcel, and thank you very much for staying within a minute. That's not easy, and there's a lot of information to share. So, yeah, I can recommend anyone to watch the website reef.support. Quite easy to remember, so good choice for the URL there. And thank you very much for joining us today, Marcel. So, with that, let me share my screen once more before we close here. Because there's one more thing that I would like to share with you. Well, two things, in fact. First of all, save the date for our next Eurisy Ground Station dotSpace webinar on Space for Climate on the 3rd of February, every first Wednesday of the month. So except this edition in January, again at 4 o'clock, and we will inform you about that later on. And I would like to invite you now to join us on the Open Campus Forum, which is open 24/7, and you will find the information, at least the contacts from the different speakers, and of course from Eurisy and from the Ground Station dotSpace organization. How do you go there? You go to the website groundstation dotSpace. You click on Open Campus in the main menu in the middle, and you make an account if you don't already have one. So register, click the register button, create a username and a password, log in, and then you can join the discussion under the topic space opportunities for the marine environment. And by the time I took the screenshot, the picture wasn't there, but it is there now, and we can continue to meet there 24/7. And you can share with us your questions, maybe opportunities, opportunities to collaborate, etc. So thank you very much for joining us today. Thank you to our speakers. Thank you to our attendees. I'm looking forward to seeing you next month, and I'm looking forward to seeing you at the forum. Cornel, any closing remarks from yourself?
Just also from my side, thank you everyone, and I just want to say that it's been a pleasure to see some familiar names such as Cecile, who gave presentation last time. So thank you for being with us, and we just hope to see you everyone also in our next session, so which will take place early next month, so early February. So yeah, hope to see you then.
Okay, thank you everyone. Goodbye.
Thank you.